tell and a roadie. Go tell and a roadie. Go tell and a roadie that everybody's.
Be careful. They'll be looking for you.
Daddy's coming. We need to go. We need to go now!
What the fuck are they?
Shut up and listen if you want to stay alive. Ethan, you gotta get out of that house.
What is that?
Hey everyone, it's Soul here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As a product of the YouTube gaming space, and as someone who grew up watching so many Let's Plays online, there's this never-ending list of games and series that linger in the back of my mind. Games and stories that I want to play and experience for myself, characters and worlds that I have yet to explore and learn of, and one of those series that's always been at the top of that list is Resident Evil. I had heard about the game here and there over the years through other people's commentary comparing it to other games, but it wasn't until Resident Evil 7's Biohazard, when people started putting out their Let's Play series, that I actually started to pay attention to it. However, despite it being really fun to watch people get scared by it, I kinda got bored. I found myself using the Let's Plays as more of a background sound rather than actively sitting down and watching it and paying attention to the story and the characters. And then when Resident Evil 8 Village came out, I wasn't really paying attention at all, except I did see quite a few memes online, which had sadly opened me up to seeing and witnessing quite possibly the biggest spoiler ever in any video game. So with all of this jumbled up knowledge about these two games, it felt only right to start my journey into the world of Resident Evil with Resident Evil 7's Biohazard and to follow along with the story of Ethan Winters. I wanted to see how he got to that eventual ending that we see in Resident Evil 8. I wanted to piece everything together, and while I so badly wish I could put the rose-colored glasses on and forget about his eventual fate, I couldn't. And so as I went through my journey playing these two games, I had the constant question of, does the spoiler ruin the experience lingering in my mind? And in short, well, it kinda did. Not entirely, but to some extent, it did. So let's discuss it and break it down together. As always, please remember to hit that like button, click subscribe to see more videos from me, and leave a comment down below. Here is your one and only warning that this video contains spoilers. Alright, grab your trusted knife, dodge your psycho girl's attacks, and let's get into it. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard came out back in 2017. It is a survival horror game developed by Capcom, and it was highly anticipated by fans of Resident Evil. The game has since been accredited as the series' revival game, and it helped bring back fans and popularity to the series after the demise of Resident Evil 5 and 6, which I can't wait to play and just see how bad it gets later on down this journey. In Biohazard, we play as the character of Ethan Winters, who is searching for his wife Mia, who's been missing for 3 years after going on a long-term babysitting job. After not hearing anything from her, Ethan suddenly gets an ominous video from Mia, who tells him to stay away before he gets an email with an address and the words, "Come and get me." For the first time in years, he has a lead as to where she is, and he jumps at the opportunity to come and find her. The contrast in Mia's personality and persona in these two opening videos is an incredible way to immediately get us as players hooked because, well, we want to know what happened to Mia to make her go from point A to point B.
You were right. I did lie to you. I shouldn't have. All I can say is that if you get this, stay away.
Arriving at the house in the swamps of Louisiana, Ethan approaches the gate of a huge house with some ominous things to be found outside. Dead birds, an abandoned car, notes scattered around saying join us or accept her gift, dismembered animals, and most importantly, Mia's bag tossed into a fire. Without knowing it, Ethan has entered into a whole nightmare of danger that's only beginning. Now, I'll admit, Ethan's lack of dialogue is something that took me a while to get used to. I personally am used to very reactive main characters. I'm used to there being a lot of narration or a main character having someone else to interact with for most of the game. This first-person solo adventure is not something I was used to, and therefore the silence caught me off guard, yet at the same time, it made everything a lot scarier. Now, I'm also no horror connoisseur. I'm still new to the horror genre in both television, film, and video games, so I don't know if this slow and gradual intro is used often in horror video games. However, it terrified me the second we entered the house. Despite it boring me when I watched it way back in the day, playing the game is a whole other experience. After the door slammed behind us, every single creak had me thinking that someone was behind me. Every gust of wind had me thinking that I'm hearing people talking and whispering in the distance. Wandering into the house, I found myself overthinking all of my fears, and I kept almost hoping to just see an enemy and get the worst of the jump scares out of the way. But that gradual beginning remained, well, gradual. I was not expecting this level of psychological horror in this game. The house is seen abandoned, and around every single corner it seems to be like the walls are crumbling down. However, the game eventually forces you down into the basement after showing you a tape of the film crew whose car was seen outside earlier.
Hillbilly Joe and his family go missing.
Not hillbillies, the Bakers. Jack and Marguerite Baker. And they were quiet, not backward. A lot of bad rumors about their son, Lucas. Bad seed, apparently.
Climbing down the hidden ladder to the dark basement, we find Mia in a prison cell, and we try to escape together despite all of her daunting, confusing, and panicked words.
Did anyone see you? Did he see you?
Hey, who else is here? What the hell's going on?
Daddy's coming. We need to go. It's not here. It's gone. It's gone! We're gonna be a family now that you're here.
Then suddenly, Mia disappears with a scream.
No, leave me alone!
Being left all alone with Ethan once more, the psychological worries came back as I started to question who is there, what is happening, where is Mia. The panic started to set in, and then we hear knocking from the basement door. Fighting for his life, Ethan attacks Mia, and there's this split second of heartbreak as we see Mia switch to presumably normal as she dies in front of Ethan. But despite her appearing to be dead, she comes back to life, attacking him once more, and this time cutting his hand off with a chainsaw. Ethan eventually fights back, finding a gun, and is able to shoot her in the head. But this is only the beginning, as Ethan is suddenly knocked out and taken hostage by the Baker family.
Welcome to the family, son.
Now, this right here is the big spoiler moment. So just another spoiler alert for anyone that does not know anything about Resident Evil 8. But this is the moment that Ethan truly dies. Going into the game, I knew that this was the moment he died. I had seen the spoilers, I had seen all the fan edits and the clips that were showing up on Instagram Reels and TikTok and everything, and I am so mad that I opened myself up to all of these spoilers. It is honestly probably my biggest regret that I saw this spoiler. Out of all the games that I've been exposed to before I got to play them for myself, I have never regretted it more than with this game. From here on out, all I saw was this infected guy running around this infected house. I didn't see a guy that's just searching for his wife and trying to fight against this mold and infection. All I saw was someone that's already dead, and it's really hard to unsee that and just remember that no one knows he's infected at this moment. But we'll discuss this more a little bit later on. Waking up with his hand stapled and at a grotesque Baker family dinner, Ethan begins his long journey to escape. Our first enemy that we have to face is Jack, the father of the household, who begins to hunt us down around the kitchen as we search for the key to unlock the door into the rest of the house. We get this really cool moment of Jack just casually walking through and destroying a whole wall of the house, as well as a few other comedic lines from him as we sneak through the house. There's even just a moment of Jack casually cutting off Ethan's leg and taunting and teasing him to put it back on. It is insanely funny and just a bit ridiculous, and also just gruesome and terrifying at the same time.
You can do it.
What the fuck?
Getting a random phone call from someone named Zoe, we eventually learn that Ethan might have a friend to help guide us through the chaos of this household. We then suddenly encounter a policeman through the window. The false hope of this moment is always fun to see in any sort of horror game, because we as players know that this police officer is most likely not making it out of this alive. And a few moments later, he is killed, but he gives Ethan his pocket knife first. And while this is a bit of a cheesy experience for players to have since we know that he's not going to survive, it's an important moment for the character of Ethan. I know the game is made with Ethan being this very blank slate type of character, but this moment of false hope I think is needed to solidify in Ethan's mind that he is all on his own and he has to do anything and everything he can to make sure that he gets out of this alive. As Ethan fights Jack in the garage, we get to see the full extent and the full horrors that this constant revival has from this family.
Do I have your attention, boy? You're about to see something wonderful.
We also bear witness to that perfect balance of horror and comedy once more. I guess I'll just plug this video in right now, but I have a video linked in my description box that I think does a great job describing this perfect balance of comedy and horror that this game has to offer. It definitely makes the overall playing experience a lot more enjoyable because there were so many times that you just couldn't help but laugh out loud at the sheer absurdity of these lines and these actions. Entering into the main area of the house, we get a sudden phone call from Zoe who instructs us on how to find and where to find the keys to the front door. I just want to add real quick here that this game is the first time I experienced a video game where we had to keep cycling back to a main and central hub. In this case, the main foyer of this building. Whether we had to come back to unlock another door after getting a key or to explore a different section of the basement, we had to keep coming back here, and I think it was really cool to watch the house deteriorate throughout the evening. Not to mention, this main area of the house I think looks great. I mean, the whole game looks really nice, but this area just has so much details in relation to the Baker family that seeing pictures all on the walls really added to the overall atmosphere and immersive experience that this game has to offer. Now, one other thing that I want to add real quick here is I personally loved how we would go from a random chase scene to these moments of calm. we'd have a moment of downtime to sort of explore the area and look for these clues and find all these little details that the developers had placed to give us a better idea of the Bakers and their characters. Yet, despite this feeling of general calm and peace in these few moments, you are never truly safe. At any moment, you could stumble upon something that triggers a new chase scene or boss battle. Whether it's Marguerite screaming in the distance, mold men jumping out of the walls, or Jack busting into the bathroom to chase us yet again, you are never truly safe outside of the safe rooms, and yet you have these moments of calm and relaxation at the same time. When running away from Jack upstairs, we end up finding another VHS tape, but this time it's from Mia. Now, I want to talk about these tapes a little bit because I personally found them to be just a bit too ridiculous, a bit too out there. I mean, I know we're dealing with essentially magic mold and all these infected monsters and people, but the idea that Mia is able to record herself on a VHS tape and get it delivered to the house in a matter of mere minutes as she's being chased by Marguerite.
No. There you are! You gave us quite a scare, young lady.
That kind of played into the comedy side of this game for me. It was just a bit too ridiculous and too far out there. However, at the surface, these VHS tapes do aid in progressing the game. They are there so that we know where to go, what clues to find, and everything like that. And it is really nice that we get to play it ourselves rather than have to sit and watch a cutscene as these tapes are played. Yet, despite my general not love for these VHS tapes, I will admit that they did a really good job at getting me scared before I even moved on to the next section. By seeing clips of Marguerite chasing Mia, by having to run away from her ourselves, the sort of psychological horror and anticipation started to build up yet again. And yet, it was this battle of fear and confidence. I knew where to go, so I was feeling a bit confident going into the next section, and yet my fear for when Marguerite was going to jump out at me started to grow more and more as we got closer and closer to that next section. So while I personally don't love the idea of these tapes just because they are a bit too absurd in my opinion, they were really effective at doing their two jobs of 1, showing us where to go, and 2, scaring us before we even face the new enemy. Before we make our way to the old house to face Marguerite, we have to first go down into the basement, which is quite possibly one of the worst sections as we enter into the darkness of the dissection room. The sheer level of darkness in this game is terrifying, and I know it gets worse later on, but the first time entering into the basement, it's just terrified me. Not to mention, the game itself has this really cool lighting feature where it adjusts the brightness as if mimicking Ethan's eyes adjusting when he enters a room. This was insanely effective at scaring me because I started to, again, overthink and think that I saw something moving in the shadows when it was really just the lighting adjusting. The first-person point of view experience was something that I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much as I did. Coming from someone who mostly plays third-person point of view games and who really only plays first-person shooters for fun with friends, I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, and I think that them deciding to go with first-person was definitely the smart move because it made a lot of the horror elements 10 times more impactful. I want to just give an extra little shout out to all of the developers that worked on the atmosphere of this game, every little detail and colorization of the walls to the house to the basement. They did a really nice job at keeping this a very immersive experience, and the setting was just so nicely done to create this area that pulled me in and kept me immersed throughout the entire game. Winding our way through the basement, we eventually fight Jack in yet another boss battle against him, but this time with chainsaws, because why not? It is in this boss battle that we get a few more lines from Jack that give us an idea of what's going on. Jack seems to be implying that he is jealous of Ethan because she wants Ethan to be her dad.
Now she says he will be her father. No. I will find him. And I will make him suffer.
We don't know exactly who she is yet, but Ethan defeats Jack before getting other information out of him. Finally being able to leave the main house, Ethan arrives at Zoe's trailer right outside, where he finds a note showing how Zoe is trying her best to resist this infection from taking hold of her. It is here that we also receive a phone call from Zoe, who informs us that her mother, Marguerite, has the ingredients and recipe to create the serum that can cure both her and Mia and allow them to leave the property. So Ethan goes forward to find Marguerite at the old house, but instead of finding her right away, he ends up finding Mia downstairs. Not the crazy psycho version of her that's currently possessed, but the innocent one that is scared and confused and is trying to figure things out to help Ethan as well. But before they can get their story straight and create a plan, Lucas drags Mia away. It is here that Lucas also gives us a little bit more information on what is going on.
Dad, right? You mind if I borrow Mommy for a little bit? Why don't you stand there? Do something!
Ethan, help!
With Mia taken away, Ethan rushes upstairs where he's confronted by a bug-ridden Marguerite, with all kinds of bugs spewing out of her, and this deteriorating, decrepit old building collapsing under your feet. Ethan has to run through the house, finding the keys and finding all the right clues to eventually lead him to the door upstairs. But as he goes to unlock it, Marguerite attacks him. When we eventually get into the door upstairs, we find this strange altar with notes from Marguerite on it, practically threatening to kill Zoe, as she has apparently been trying to get her hands on this information. This information being how to make the serum that will cure them. As Ethan explores further into this area, we get a few more notes from Marguerite that are reminiscent to Zoe's in the trailer. We see that Marguerite was trying to fight off this infection. She was trying to resist this urge, and we see that struggle occurring in these diary entries. Needing her light to progress the story, we go back to the site where we assume we will find her dead body, only to discover that she is crawling away in a random tunnel. This mutated version of Marguerite we soon face in this crazy boss battle that I personally enjoyed way more than I did with Jax. I loved being able to just run around and shoot at Marguerite with all of the ammo and weapons that I had built up and stored at this point. I definitely was feeling very comfortable with my weapons and my ammo, and it definitely made for a really fun experience with this boss battle. Marguerite is absolutely terrifying as this creepy, crawly, mutated bug version of herself, and while this was all very scary, I had a blast playing this boss battle. Now, with Marguerite dead and Jack being killed earlier, I have to admit I was feeling pretty good. I was feeling pretty comfortable, pretty confident. Even the mold monsters that were subtly appearing inside of the yard, they were a bit easy peasy. I gotten used to them at that point. But as if sensing my comfort, the game suddenly launches us back into the insane darkness that this game has to offer. We enter in upstairs into this creepy old part of the house that is pitch black, and we start to see child toys. We see childish toys around the house as well as a child's drawings, and eventually we find the first ingredient to the serum before the game decides that mold monsters and infection and gore is not enough to scare us, but a creepy child is now introduced. For the first time in the entire game, we finally catch a glimpse at who this she is. This is the girl that is presumably controlling the entire family, and with her suddenly laughing and running away, Ethan is then attacked by a group of mold monsters, to which he has to flee the house and try and meet up with Zoe back at her trailer, but things never go to plan.
Now where the hell are you? You know, never mind. We only need the head, and you've got it. This is gonna help me and me, right?
Hey, buddy. I thought you should know. I decided that Zoe needed a timeout. She and Mia are here with me. And they're keeping each other company.
Just let them both go! What do you need them for?
Nah, that's family business, Ethan, and not your concern, understand? Now, if you want the head, feel free to come by any time and I'll give it to you. But only if you participate in a little activity I put together just for you.
What activity?
I know you're excited, but don't worry. It's not going anywhere.
To progress the game, we have to first go back into the main area of the house and go down into the creepy basement once more. However, this time, the power is cut off, leading the basement to be 10 times darker than before in this terrifying section as we try and dodge brand new mutations of mold. Instead of them being tall and a bit slow to shoot at, they are now quick, jumping, and crawling on the ground in these new versions. Based on the few videos that I have seen online, I know not everyone agrees with this next statement, but I personally feel like the pacing of all these new layers and levels to the enemies was really nicely done. I saw on a few videos that there's quite a few people that wished the mold monsters would develop faster, that there would be new versions, or to just have new enemies in general. However, I personally felt like the pacing of when we got these new adaptations and mutations was really spot on. Like I just said, I was just starting to get comfortable with the regular mold monsters, and that's the moment that the game decided to introduce this new mutation. And I think the same sort of goes for when we got introduced to all of the different family members in the Baker household. I liked the constant switch up of what kind of fights and enemies they were, and I think that pacing was really nicely done, although I do know that Marguerite's section was a bit shorter than many people would hope for. I do think that as a character, I would have wanted to get to spend more time with Marguerite. However, as an enemy and a sort of boss battle, I really liked the pacing throughout that old house, and that drove us into these different levels of fights and enemies. Getting the brand new key from the police officer's dead body because, you know, who doesn't love a bit of gore in a horror game? We are then able to unlock the one bedroom upstairs on the opposite side of the house. It's in here that we learn a little bit more information about Jack and Marguerite as we see a photo of Jack from his time in the army. We also see that this room is set up with a bit of a puzzle. Now, I didn't really talk too much about the puzzles earlier because I personally feel like they aren't too apparent. They are pretty well integrated in the game. There's nothing too difficult, there's nothing too complicated, but they work well at giving us a brief moment of pause and a bit of a slowdown in the entire game. I think the idea that I had going into this game was that it was probably going to be a bit more choppy. I thought it would be very jarring and sharp to suddenly switch from a fight and a chase scene to a crazy complicated puzzle. However, this balance and integration of the puzzles, even just the shadow puzzles, was really nicely done in this game, and I just have to give them a quick round of applause. Finding the first of the key cards to progress the game, we end up going to the last room that is locked upstairs, which ends up being Lucas's old bedroom. It's in here that we find not only the second and last key card, but we also get information on Lucas's character. In his old diary entries from when he was a child, we learn that he was taken to a doctor to presumably study his brain. There definitely seems to be something wrong with Lucas in terms of his psychological health. He doesn't seem to fully be there, and what follows is this really disturbing note from Lucas, who talks about killing a boy his age. Now, the question of did he actually kill someone is up in the air, but I personally think that based on Jack's dialogue at the end of the game, that Lucas most likely did not kill another kid.
Hey, shh, I know. I'm not gonna hurt you. Hell, I never would have if I could have helped it.
What do you mean?
I'm no killer, son. Neither is Marguerite, nor my boy Lucas.
In my opinion, it makes a lot more sense that Lucas is most likely just schizophrenic or has some sort of psychological problems in which he is envisioning and seeing all of these things happen, but that he did not actually kill someone himself. And this idea that Lucas is not fully there mentally is on full display in this next section as we enter into his area of the house. Lucas has a videotape prepared for us in which he appears to be showing off these powers that this girl has given him. He views this infection as some sort of superpower as he appears to flaunt it in front of Ethan.
What? What, Eveline? I'm just trying to show him. Not everybody wants to go back to how things were. Zoe's a stupid bitch. She doesn't understand that I don't want to go back to how things were before my father found y'all. Now everybody wants to turn back the clock.
Lucas's psychotic tendencies are also shown as he has set up a bunch of booby traps for Ethan to walk into as we go further into the building. We also get to see another VHS tape from someone by the name of Clancy, who is Lucas's previous victim. Now, in this videotape, we do get to see the solution for the upcoming area, which is one of Lucas's crazy death traps. However, before we can get into that area, despite my confidence in feeling happy and sure that I can get out of that specific area, we have to first go through an entirely new section that introduces us to a spewing mold monster as if in a crazy wrestling match. We have Lucas narrating the events, laughing his head off through the speakerphones all around us as we as Ethan are just trying to survive and get out of this situation. And once again, this just goes to show that Lucas is insane.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the ball fight. Keep it clean, gentlemen, we have rules.
And despite my confidence from earlier, feeling sure that I can get out of this next section, I was so run out of ammo, I was so aggravated at Lucas that I just wanted to shove it in his face, and we did just that, as you're able to fly through the next area since you saw the tapes earlier. This goes on to anger Lucas.
You're supposed to die! That was supposed to be for you, goddammit!
You end up chasing him as you find the next piece of the serum, as well as both Zoe and Mia. But with the serum having just been made, we are suddenly attacked by Jack yet again as this mutated large mold monster.
Zoe! Get your ass back to the house! I will deal with you later!
And in a true action hero showdown, we get to run around shooting Jack in all of these sort of target spots on his body, but despite our best efforts, the only way to end this fight and to progress the game is to use one of the serums on Jack. With this new predicament of there only being one serum left, Ethan now has to choose between curing Mia or curing Zoe. Now, the fact that we as the player get to choose here raises a lot of problems. The first one being that we as a player don't have that strong of a connection to Mia. I think a lot of people didn't like her because we never truly got to see her good side. This is one of the times that Ethan being a bit of a blank slate is a negative in this game. The best thing about Ethan being a blank slate is that it really helped with the immersive experience for the player. He wasn't commenting too much, his personality is pretty bland, so you as a player could relate to him pretty easily. However, because of this, that connection that he has to Mia isn't as apparent, and therefore, our drive to save Mia isn't necessarily as strong because we've only seen her be possessed. We've only seen her attacking Ethan, and we didn't get to see any of the good that the two of them shared. Zoe, on the other hand, is a brand new character who has been helping us the entire game, which in a lot of ways made her a lot more appealing to choose. However, the ending with Zoe, it is the bad ending. If you choose Zoe, both Zoe and Mia will end up dead, and it's also not the canon ending that the creators want you to choose. They want you to choose to save Mia, and in terms of Ethan as a character, he is there to save his wife, so of course he's going to choose his wife instead of Zoe. It is just a shame that we as a player didn't get to see this and witness and experience that shared affection that Mia and Ethan have for each other. Don't get me wrong, I love a good butterfly effect story, but I definitely think this was not a good decision for this particular story. I can't help but feel like a cutscene in this moment would have been a lot better because it would also allow for Zoe's character to be a little bit more concrete. The fact that Zoe is the one that tells Ethan to use the serum and then suddenly acts shocked when Mia gets chosen has seemingly always been a bit weird to everyone that has played this game, and myself included.
It's fine. It was foolish thinking I could escape. But Zoe...
Go! Both of you just go!
Come with us. I'm sure there's someone who can help.
This is not home. Apparently I belong here.
So I think having this as a cutscene would have just helped cleared up a lot of these characters instead of having us choose. So with Ethan choosing Mia, the two of them get in the boat and begin to drive off. It almost feels like this could be the ending of the game, but everything doesn't feel in place. Maybe it's the fact that Lucas fled the scene and we didn't get to fight him. Maybe it's the fact that we don't know what's happening to Zoe, but before we can even truly question this as the ending, we are suddenly attacked and knocked out. We then wake up as Mia at the base of this giant shipwreck.
Ethan? Ethan! Oh! Ethan! Ethan!
Seeing Ethan get dragged off by the mold, Mia rushes inside, following along the corridors of this rusted up ship, as she has these flashbacks and she is trying to remember what happened here. It is here that we see this young girl, Evie, in full for the first time in the game.
Settle down, little girl. Settle.
Are you remembering?
What? What are you?
She appears in front of Mia and tries to force her to remember, and then we suddenly get this VHS flashback to Mia's time on the ship. Mia was never on a babysitting job. She was instead a secret agent transporting the biochemical weapon that is known as Evie. In Eveline's programming, she views Mia as her mother, which is why, after she kills Alan and her infection starts to spread across the ship, she goes out into the swamps and ends up infecting the Baker family as an attempt to create her own family. The sudden change of pace to being a bit more action-heavy was a bit jarring at first, however I did eventually get used to it, and it was a nice change of pace after being in such a dark area of the house and all of the horrors at the main Baker household. With Mia rushing around the ship trying to stop Evie from getting out, she ends up failing and getting infected, which leads her to get captured and controlled by Evie.
Ethan. You were right. I did lie to you. I shouldn't have. All I can say is that if you get this, stay away. Forget that you ever knew me. Have a good life.
Having come full circle and seeing why Mia sent this video, it is then that we cut back to the present day and we see that Mia rejects Evie's offer of becoming her mother once more.
Can we be a family like before?
No, Evie. We can't be a family. We were never a family. We will never be a family.
Then I don't need you anymore.
With all of this, Mia has to now try and find Ethan on this ship that is becoming more and more infected by the minute, with mold monsters coming out of the woodwork, and the game decided to have us start from zero. We have no weapons. Mia is rushing around the ship with not even a pocket knife, and it is a terrifying jump. Going from being super overpowered and just blasting away at Jack as if every single explosive costs nothing, to all of a sudden having to try and aim very carefully because you only have C and so many bullets, was a very daunting transition, and it was a very effective way to put us, the player, back into an uneasy feeling of gameplay. After running around the ship and finding one or two weapons as well as remote bombs, Mia finally finds Ethan. Meanwhile, Ethan, who's been trapped within this sort of molded mass, he has been having a conversation with the Baker family in the sort of mold consciousness that this allows. We see that the Bakers are innocent. For the first time in the entire game, we see the entire family as truly innocent. They are victims of Evie. And Jack explains how Eveline has controlled all of them.
That girl, Eveline, she did this. What the hell is she? No, what did she do to you?
She infected us with her gift. That's what she calls it.
I found a busted out tank in the bayou. Everything changed after that.
It's a very sad moment in this game, and I just have to give a round of applause to the actor that plays Jack, because his performance here was really nicely done and was really effective. We've been fighting Jack so many times, so to suddenly feel sympathy towards him after just one scene was a really nicely done performance. We also then get the keywords and information from Jack to go and find Eveline. Then Mia seems to confirm this idea that Evie is elsewhere as she shoves Ethan outside of the door, hands him some sort of vial, while Evie is standing right behind her, except now we know that that is not how Evie appears. That is simply a vision of Evie that she is projecting into their minds, but that is not her true version. With Mia's sudden sacrifice angering him and driving him further, Ethan finds himself rushing towards the mines in search of Eveline. He goes down these tunnels, which are yet again booby-trapped by Lucas, as well as fighting off more mold monsters, where he ends up stumbling across a laboratory. It's in here that we realize that Lucas wasn't exactly under the same amount of control of Evie as his parents were. Through all of the notes and the information that we are able to find here, we see that Lucas was working with some random company, studying Eveline and sharing his information and research findings. But thankfully he did this, and now, because of him, we are able to create the serum that will kill Eveline. So with this new serum, Ethan rushes back to the main house, where he stumbles into the basement way back to the beginning of the game. It is here that we see the empty wheelchair of who we thought was the baker's grandmother, but turns out to actually be Evie. As Ethan wanders around the house, we have these weird flashbacks to earlier sections of the game, and we get to see how Evie was sort of controlling Mia when she attacked Ethan.
Ethan, it's okay. It's okay, it's me. I know you didn't mean to hurt me.
Kill him, Mommy.
But you shouldn't have done that!
Doesn't want to be my daddy? Then he can die. Now it's Mommy's turn to kill you.
As Eveline tries to play mind games with Ethan, he suddenly reveals the serum, and it scares her as this emotional music begins to grow.
And then maybe you'll play nicely.
I'm not playing.
No! Get that away from me!
This is one thing that I will say really confused me about the game. I don't understand why all of a sudden we have highly emotional music in this section. I don't know who exactly I'm supposed to be emotional towards. Am I supposed to be feeling this sad and emotional music because we are witnessing Mia get controlled by Eveline and we're seeing her attack Ethan despite her not wanting to? Or are we supposed to be feeling bad for Eveline? Are we supposed to feel bad for her since all she wanted was a family of her own? I'm a bit confused by this music, but without really getting an answer, we stumble our way closer and closer towards Eveline before we inject the serum in her. Doing so, she suddenly transforms into this giant final boss monster, and we have this insane, heroic, and action-packed shootout before we see the face of Chris Redfield. Now, I myself, like I said way back in the beginning of the game, have not played any of the other Resident Evil games, so I don't exactly know who Chris is yet, but I can't wait to go back and see his full story later on down this journey together with you guys. So with Ethan killing Eveline, with Chris Redfield and the Umbrella Corporation showing up, Mia and Ethan are finally able to leave the Baker estate and fly their way to safety with this heroic and cinematic outro.
They say that when one door closes, another opens. Well, a door closed tonight. And what a long night it was. But not just for me. Mia and I weren't the only victims here. So were the Bakers. It was that thing, Eveline, who made them that way. But now Eveline's dead. And these guys are here to clean up the mess. I had just come to terms with losing Mia. But now she's back and wants to start over. Put all this behind us. Maybe this is where the next door opens.
In case you can't already tell, I had an absolute blast playing this game. However, when I actually start to sit down and think about the character of Ethan Winters and the overall story of Resident Evil 7, there is this sort of dampening effect because I already know about the spoiler later on in Resident Evil 8. I think the fact that I knew Ethan was infected took away from a lot of the minor tension tools that were being used, the biggest one being the sort of ticking clock tool. With the house sort of deteriorating in front of us, with the mold growing into the upstairs part of the house and spreading across the entire estate, the idea that there's this time limit before Ethan is about to get infected is definitely there, but I never personally felt that sort of pressure because I already knew that Ethan was infected. If I didn't, I definitely think I would be a lot more rushed and would take things a lot more seriously than I was. I also feel that because Ethan is such a blank slate character, that the fact that I know what's going to happen took away my only opportunity to connect with him. There's really not much there in relation to Ethan's personality and character, so taking this one thing away, which is the biggest thing to affect him, was just overall really disappointing. And now I know I did this to myself, I opened myself up to spoilers, but it was still hard to play the game and not get any sort of connection to Ethan. There's very limited dialogue and reactions from him, whereas I feel Resident Evil 8, which I have just recently finished playing, already has a lot more dialogue and reactions from him. Even just having him speak a bit more allowed me to have a greater connection to him, so the fact that Resident Evil 7 was so mild in his personality was just overall disappointing, since I know where he ends up. I guess I wanted more of a context and a background to this character who meets such a tragic end. I also feel like if I didn't know where this story goes, I would have a lot more questions about the mold and the infection. I guess because I know that Ethan is already infected and it takes place in the second game after a period of time, it doesn't have me questioning why Lucas isn't fully under Evie's control. I kind of overlooked the fact that it's been 3 whole years for Zoe to not get controlled by Evie. The likelihood of that happening is very slim, but I guess because I kind of thought and knew that Ethan is infected and for presumably around at the very least a year and a half, I didn't really question this because I just assumed it's how the sort of mold and infection works. But that being said, if I didn't know this knowledge about Ethan being infected, I probably would be questioning why this is possible. How is it that Zoe didn't get fully under Evie's control? How is it that Lucas broke free? Now, I know there are the DLCs where we get to see a little bit more about these two characters, and I will be discussing that in a separate video for just the DLCs for Resident Evil 7. However, within the main game, there's a lot of unanswered questions that I probably would have been a little more hung up on if I didn't know the ending to Resident Evil 8. So I guess to sort of wrap things up, did my knowledge of the spoiler ruin the entire game for me? Absolutely not. I had such a blast playing this game with you guys, and I can't wait to learn about Chris's backstory and to just dive straight into the rest of the world of Resident Evil. Now, I do realize that I have started with quite possibly the scariest Resident Evil game that is out there, so I am looking forward to seeing some of the more action-heavy games and to see how those compare to something that is like Resident Evil 7 and what I believe is the earlier games that are driven more by the survival horror elements. If you want to see my reactions, make sure to go check out my live streams because that is where you get to hear my raw and real reactions to everything going on as we explore these games. So with that, if you guys enjoyed this video, please remember to hit that like button down below and leave your thoughts in the comment section. While you're down there, make sure to click subscribe to see more videos from me and turn on notifications if you want to be notified whenever I post a new video. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you future souls next time. Bye, guys!